Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 26th of October 2021, and these are the stories that we will be talking about during the course of the show. We'll begin first of all by the anti-Muslim attitude, an anti-Pakistan attitude that has become even more blatant in India after Pakistan's win in the T20 series against India. In fact, the first in a World Cup in which Pakistan gave a thrashing to the Indian side. What happened afterwards is that Mohammad Shami, who's a 31-year-old Muslim bowler who is a part of the Indian team, was thrashed on social media, and not thrashed in a very light term, thrashed in the lowest of lows by people from all across India. Not only that, there were some condemnations from former Indian batsmen as well. But nevertheless, there were some publications and some batsmen that also supported Mohammad Shami. At the same time, there have also been jubilations across India due to Pakistan's win, and the Indian government has taken action against that. There have been reports of school teachers who've been sacked of their jobs, or others who've been brutally, of course, thrashed, and others who have been put into jail. Now, this is going to be our first story of the day. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the Green Summit in Riyadh that has ended. Our Prime Minister is back in Pakistan. Nevertheless, the initiative that has been launched by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia has been lauded by all the countries that participated in that summit, including our Premier, who also talked about all the green energy initiatives that Pakistan has taken up under his government. This is going to be our second segment of the day. Then we'll be talking about a decision that has been taken by the Federal Shariat Court, ladies and gentlemen, that has declared Swara as illegal and un-Islamic. Now, this was a three-member bench that was headed by FSC Chief Justice Noor Mohammad Meskanzai, who observed that the tradition of giving away a minor girl to settle disputes was against the injunctions of Islam. This is going to be our third story. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be talking about Azad Jammu and Kashmir's first women-run police station that opened in Rawalakot, how that is going to change the state of women in Azad Jammu and Kashmir. This is going to be our last story as well. Let's begin with our first story, ladies and gentlemen, and that concerns Pakistan's brilliant win, 10-wicket win against India in the T20 World Cup, and all that ensued, starting from Mohammad Shami and all the others in India who were jubilating at Pakistan's win, who got a beating or were put into jail or were sacked from their jobs. More in the following report.
Linguistic charged climate of Modi's majoritarian India is posing threat to minorities and particularly Muslims who continue to live in fear. Hindu nationalists who are calling the shots in New Delhi transformed a gentleman game of cricket into divisive battleground by spewing hate and toxic nationalism. Indian media backed by the BJP government was already beating drums of war prior to Pakistan's impressive win over India in their T20 World Cup 2021 match in Dubai. Soon after green shirts inflicted crushing defeat upon Indian cricket team, saffron-led hate unraveled against Muslims and Kashmiris. As soon as the match at the Dubai stadium ended, some Kashmiri students celebrating Pakistan's victory were attacked in India. A torrent of social media abuse was directed at only Muslim player of Indian squad, Mohammad Shami. Hundreds of messages were left on 31-year-old Shami's social media accounts which dubbed him traitor. Indian politicians, including the former cricketer turned BJP MP Gautam Gambhir, openly threatened people who were celebrating Pakistan's victory. Many Kashmiri students reported that they were assaulted by armed men as they watched the closing stages of the game, and distressing pictures of injured Kashmiri students made rounds on social media. These bleak dynamics vividly depict that India is making mockery of its own democratic credentials, and since Muslims are constantly living in climate of fear, BJP lent credence to two-nation theory.
To discuss more about this issue, we've been joined by Hamza Ameer, who is a journalist. Hamza, thank you very much to have joined us. Hamza, is India not making a mockery of its own democratic traditions by putting into jail, by thrashing, by sacking people who were jubilant at Pakistan's win in the T20 Cup?
Well, when we talk about India, it is always politics over everything, and now it is sports. India loses the match with Pakistan, and they end up actually thrashing and making a whole campaign against Muslims in India. I talk about Muhammad Shami, who is the main pace bowler of Indian cricket team, and he is being thrashed for being a Muslim. So yes, India is and has been making a mockery every now and then, and they come up actually a step further every single time anything of that sort happened. The sports that event that happened was big, but it was not as bad as it has turned out to be because of such people who make a political mockery out of the whole sporting event. So unfortunately, yes, India continues to make a mockery of themselves in front of the world.
But Hamza, why? I mean, I don't understand why. Why is this? There's such a lot of Pakistan hatred or hatred against Muslims that has only come to the forefront, and it's still coming to the forefront by all these different incidents that are happening.
Well, Omar, there are 10,000 reasons for them to have an anti Pakistan sentiment. One, they cannot absorb the fact that Kashmir, the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, is not part of India. And the people of Kashmir do not agree to the fact when India says that they are part of India. And that is why their inclination towards Pakistan is something that India is never and is never is going to be in a position to accept it. And whenever there is celebration in the Indian legally occupied Jammu and Kashmir in favor of Pakistan, they call them traitors, they call them anti-India, and then they create this rage against the Muslim population across India in that regard. So yes, they have this hatred and they are actually very openly expressing it. Unfortunately enough, as we always say, the world seems to be having a very closed eye policy on what India does against Pakistan and Muslims at large in their own country.
And you know, Hamza, it was our players who came to the defense of Mohammad Shami. I'll just quote one of our players who said, Rizwan, who said that Shami was a star and one of the best bowlers in the world. Please respect your stars. He urged that he also said cricket should bring people together instead of dividing them. Isn't that the whole concept of sports that brings people together from different nations and makes it a game that one enjoys rather than create hatred out of it?
Well, I would say that the cricketing sport in India and Pakistan is by far one of the most biggest and most loved event. And India Pakistan against each other is by far, as we call it, it's a World Cup final in Pakistan, and it is the same sentiment in India. But when they turn sports into dirty politics, especially against someone like Mohammad Shami, who's a star performer for the Indian team. He's got over 350 wickets in one-day internationals and T20. So his credentials are nowhere that can be the basis of judging him on his performance. But yes, him being a Muslim certainly has become a thing that has become a more reason for the people to hate him, which is absolutely bizarre. Our Pakistani sportsmen have actually come to the rescue, and even in India, there are former Indian cricketers.
There are some stars that have come to his rescue as well. Sachin Tendulkar, for one, for example.
Yes, so that is something that India just continues to do so. It just goes on to show the kind of hatred they have for the Muslims at large, who are even residing and representing the Indian flag at the global stage. Yet they are not able to absorb the fact that there needs to be tranquility and equal rights provision when it comes to the Muslims or Indians for that matter, whoever is an Indian national. And Muhammad Shami happens to be a star performer, and if he's going through this kind of rage, then you can always only imagine what the local Muslim population of India would be going through on a daily basis.
Now, Hamza, there have been some former Indian cricket stars who have also come up against Shami, and the BCCI has yet to give an official statement regarding all the hatred that is being spewed against Shami. Do you feel that the BCCI will at one time come up with some sort of a statement kind of backing Shami, or do you feel it's going to be a neutral statement?
Have to come up with a backing statement for Mohammad Shami because of, again, his sporting career and his representation for the Indian cricket team. Because any other hatred that is coming against him is not because of him being a sports person, it is because of him being a Muslim. And that is something that BCCI would not be able to be in a position to second or even take a neutral stance on. But yes, Uh, Certainly, what has happened is very, very unfortunate. Muhammad Shami is one of the star performers, as I said, and he continues to represent India at bigger stages. He's performed in difficult situations. It just so happened to be a day when Pakistan did not even give a single loophole to India to capitalize on, and that is why Pakistan came out strong. But yet, this kind of hatred being ingested and forced into the sporting event is something that is very unfortunate, and it is actually continue to hurt India, Pakistan, both cricket loving nations, to be able to compete with each other, even at the global stage or even at a normal cricketing series against each other.
That is true. And Hamza, despite the fact that there's such a lot of hate being spewed against Mohammad Shami, there's also a lot of good remarks, or how should I say, positive remarks that have come up from the Indian media and from the Indian players as well. The Times of India dubs the Pakistani squad the perfect 10 after the emphatic win over India. NDTV quotes also saying that the men in blue needed to gather themselves and prepare for the upcoming fixtures. He was talking about, of course, India as well. Sunil Gavaskar said that the loss is an absolute hammering for India, and there are some positives but a lot of negatives as well. Let's talk about what happened in Kashmir, Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Those who were jubilant after Pakistan's win were subjugated to torture. This is a continuous, spate of torture that is going on in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and it seems to me as if the Indian forces really need any kind of excuse to badger, to hammer, to brutalize the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. What's your take on that?
Well, I would second that the Indian forces that are have put on ground in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir only need excuses to actually take their anger and rage out against the Muslim population. And not to forget, we've always spoke about this in the past as well, that India is working towards turning Kashmir from a Muslim majority state into a Muslim minority state. And that is why they do not, and they would not want anyone to actually at least even talk about being having kind of positive sentiments for Pakistan. They cannot afford to do that. They do not allow that. And yes, these kind of events become excuses for these forces to actually take out their rage against the people who are only expressing themselves. When the global community talks about freedom of expression and goes on to cross the boundaries against the Muslims at large, then this is something that also should be brought to the notice of the global community, that what kind of a dual policy do they have when it comes to the Muslims in Kashmir, who are not even allowed to express themselves in support of a team on a cricketing event. They are forced to support India. If they would be doing that, they'll be celebrated. But now, because they have supported Pakistan and they're celebrating Pakistan's victory, so they are assaulted and tortured. What kind of an inhumane approach
Exactly.
can a
And not
country
only
have
that,
towards its
Hamza,
own
not only
citizens?
that, cases are, FIRs are registered against them, as has been confirmed to the ANI by Vijay Kumar, who's the IG of Kashmir Police, or the others, DG Dilbagh Singh, have said that they have registered 2 FIRs in this case. And of course, Pakistan's victory, all because Pakistan's victory was celebrated in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Let's also go now to Punjab, Hamza, where some Kashmiri students who were celebrating Pakistan's win were also subjected to torture. Their dorms were closed and then they were beaten after the lights were closed off. Do you feel that this is kind of an escalation of violence against the Muslim community in India? And do you feel some kind of resistance needs to now come up from the Muslims in India?
Well, I would say that out of being very cautious, that once we all of this has started as a new episode after the cricketing event between India and Pakistan. Now, a sporting event turned into such an ugly, second half approach or second half reactions coming in India against the Muslim population. It just seems that sometimes probably it is far better to not even play and between India and Pakistan any kind of sports whatsoever, because it actually does nothing but brings back only difficulties for the Muslims in India. And this anger, this excuse for the population in India, the Hindu population in India, to target Muslims wherever they see them, is something that only needs just a small trigger. And unfortunately enough, this continues to happen. Even today, earlier today, there was a Muslim-owned restaurant that was being opened in some part of India, and there was a whole protest being staged outside it because they did not want a Muslim a family to actually own a restaurant or a business in their vicinity. This is the kind of hatred. This is the kind of intolerance that persists in India against the Muslim population. And unfortunately enough, we talk about them standing up for themselves, but I don't think that they are in a position to do so because the government of India supports these radical groups who target Muslims, and if they are supporting them, then obviously any Muslim who would stand would be slaughtered, and they would not want their family members to be slaughtered like this the way they have in the past.
Now, it's not just, brutalizing the students or putting up FIRs against them, but it is also sacking those who are working in different educational institutions. I'll cite the case of Nafisa Atari, who was expelled from her job in Nirja Modi School in Rajasthan's Udaipur area for expressing, of course, a pleasure for Pakistan's win against India. Now, do you feel incidents such as these, and there are a lot of incidents that have happened due to Pakistan's win against India, but we are very happy about, but of course the repercussions we are not very happy about at all. But do you feel that this is giving rise to a very blatant polarization within the communities in India itself that will lead to grave consequences?
Omar, there are legal consequences. Even someone in India puts a WhatsApp status in celebration for Pakistan, there are legal consequences. Or if even someone tweets in favor of Pakistan in India, and now, as just you mentioned, a competent person who was a Muslim lost her job because of her support for the Pakistani team, a normal sentiment that anyone can have for a particular team in a sporting event. So this is something that, as I said, when it is being done on an official basis by the authorities themselves, it is definitely promoting a very radical, very rigid, very extremist approach and spreading it amongst the people, trying to tell them that if you're a Muslim and you're in India, you're not supposed to be or breathe as freely as any other Indian or a Hindu Indian would feel. And that is the discrimination that is being done. It has been going on. And now, with the Modi regime in power, they could seem to have complete open-ended support and open-ended freedom to do whatever they want to. And nobody
What,
seems to be
Hamza,
noticing
look
that.
at all this hypocrisy that concerns the so-called largest democracy in the world, where on one end Muslims are beaten up and are sacked from their jobs and are put into jails, FIRs are put against them. On the other hand, when it comes to anti-Muslim content on social media, the report that has recently, I hope you've read it, that report was recently released that shows that Facebook has been has been very selective in curbing the hate speech against Muslims in India. Now, when you have such a kind of attitude, you are kind of sidelining the Muslim community, which is a huge community in India, to one side. And there will be, at one end, when you push somebody towards one side, towards one end, at one point they react. And doesn't that lead to consequences that will not be will be uncontrollable by the Indian government or the Indian forces?
See, I would say that the kind of steps that are forced onto the Muslims in India are going to make them more stronger internally and create a resistance out of them in times to come. Because oppression is the thing that actually results in stronger resistances. Unfortunately enough, the Muslims in India may just be feeling very lonely only for the fact that it's only Pakistan, the only Muslim country that actually raises their voices in their favor on their concerns regularly. Other than that, the Muslim world seems to have a very quiet policy. But yet, these kind of things create an internal resistance. Every time, whenever there's an incident in Kashmir, it is always blamed onto Pakistan, but everyone knows that it is an internal resistance that operates out of Kashmiris themselves, who actually take arms whenever they want to against the Indian oppression. So oppression is going to create a resistance, and if this goes on, it is going to be India itself who is going to be the suffering party, because this resistance is going to grow and increase its presence from within India, from the Muslims in India
That
who
is
are
true, and it is
not going to
growing.
tolerate
This resistance is growing with time that passes by, with India that continues with its belligerent attitude towards the Muslims and other minorities in India. You know, this is leading to a very, very dangerous situation in India. Let's hope the Indian government or the forces realize this before it is really too late for them to handle this. Thank you very much, Hamza, Ameer, to have joined us for this very important discussion on this continuous attitude towards Muslims in India. Of course, that has come also again to the forefront following India's defeat by Pakistan in the T20 series, and how Mohammad Shami and others have been labelled traitors. Let's go to our next segment, ladies and gentlemen. That concerns the Middle East Green Initiative that was launched in Riyadh by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. Our Prime Minister Imran Khan was there, where he talked about Pakistan's initiatives as well for alleviating the effects of climate change. More in the following report.
Premier Imran Khan has concluded another productive visit to Saudi Arabia, which further affirmed bilateral relations between the two countries. According to official accounts, the Prime Minister held wide-ranging talks with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, held other important meetings beside attending the launch of the Middle East Green Initiative Summit hosted by Saudi Arabia. Imran Khan hailed deep-rooted ties with the kingdom and expressed satisfaction at the close cooperation between the two countries in diverse fields. A statement issued by the Prime Minister office said the Premier lauded Crown Prince's signature Saudi Vision 2030. While addressing the launching ceremony of MGI Summit, Imran Khan emphasized the urgency for collective efforts of the entire world for tackling the challenge of climate change.
We decided that before the world takes any action, we as a country, for our own survival, must take whatever it is possible within our reach. We will shift 60% of all our energy into clean energy by 2030. 30% of all transport will be shifted to electric vehicles by, again, 2030. We've also focused on nature-based solutions. In 10 billion trees, we've already planted 2.5 billion. We plan to plant 1 billion mangrove trees by 2023. In the process, we have also provided green jobs. 85,000 jobs we've produced, and by the next year, this should go up to 200,000.
The Prime Minister praised Saudi Arabia's green ambitions, besides explaining Pakistan's signature climate initiatives, which underline resonance of Pak-Saudi battle against climate change. It is pertinent to mention here that Green Saudi Arabia and Green Middle East initiatives were launched by the Crown Prince in March 2021. Meanwhile, Islamabad is also focusing on nature-based solutions to protect the planet and reduce its carbon footprint. The successful culmination of current visit underscored the significance Pakistan attaches to its ties with the kingdom.
To talk more about the green initiatives that have been launched by the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, how important is it to alleviate the measures against the climate change that is slowly and steadily engulfing the entire world? We've been joined by Dr. Shahid. He's a climate expert. Dr. Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. Dr. Saab, Pakistan has taken a lot of initiatives when it comes to alleviating the effects of climate change, whether it be the 10 billion tree tsunami, whether it be going away from coal and going towards clean energy sources. Pakistan has taken the right initiatives. Now the Middle East is also going in the same direction. How important do you feel all these initiatives are?
I'm very happy to hear that Middle East is even thinking of the Green Initiative. And let me go back and see when Prime Minister Imran Khan announced 1 billion tree project. World was not ready to believe that Pakistan will be able to plant so many trees. And when the next time he announced 10 billion trees, so there was some kind
apprehension.
Of yes, whether we will be able to do it or not. But now we see the world is following us. And then let me also quote one green belt movement of Kenya years back in 2004, I guess. The leader of that movement, Wangai, she was given Nobel Prize for planting 5 million trees. And then Prime Minister Imran Khan is 1 billion and then 10 billion. But I think it's more important than even the Nobel Prize. That word is now following Pakistan's footprints.
But there are a lot of countries that are not following this.
I'll get back to that, but before getting into who is not doing much, when the Middle East, it was really surprising for me even as a student of climate change. I read an article where it was quoted a hadith from the Prophet that the day of judgment will not come before the Arab will get green again.
Okay.
Green again.
Okay.
That means it was green at some times within the history. And it was not very easy to think that the Arab deserts of Arab will get green again. Now, when I see that this is a great initiative that Saudi Arab is going to follow, and then inviting Imran Khan over there
and other leaders as well,
and other leaders among them, is also recognition of the Pakistan's efforts on the climate change.
Green Saudi Arabia, Green Middle East were also launched by Saudi Arabia,
Green Middle East, then Green Initiative Foundation, and they announced 50 billion tree plantation. You can imagine it, the impact it will have on the Middle East and the region. And other countries are already announcing different green initiatives. But unfortunately, what we see in the world, there are two steps when we think about the climate change. One, that we adapt to the change. Change is there, but we are not trying to stop or mitigate, we are trying to adapt to it. Most of the developing countries, they were kind of in the adaptation mode. Pakistan was the first, I guess, that aggressively started the mitigation plans. The plantation, the carbon sequestration, that is a mitigation plan. And in Pakistan have its climate change policy in place. But when we look at the countries responsible for the major changes in the climate change, they are the one who needs to do more serious work on the mitigation. Instead of asking too much from the developing countries in the adaptation, either they need to support the developing countries in the mitigation, in their mitigation plans also, but they need to do a lot more on their own green initiatives, so that they can reduce the pollution.
Also, carbon dependence on carbon and coal needs to also reduce. But why, in your point of view, sir, is the West or the developed nations not inclined as much towards the green initiatives as countries such as, for example, Pakistan or the Middle East?
It is hard to imagine the regions which have better understanding of the causes of climate change. Their people are educated, they are even supporting the small initiatives in the south on the climate change adaptation and mitigation, but they are unable to put enough pressure, political and the social pressure, on their own governments to adapt their food production systems to reduce emissions. The major emissions coming from the West is their industrial agriculture,
of course,
particularly the crops, both crops and livestock. So it is quite painful when we change the systems, we know that, but they are asking these painful steps from the developing countries, and they are
themselves not following.
Not following because it has some political repercussions also. Where the farmers, it's not that kind of a thing that we stop this thing and then we moved to the other one. They have their skills in the old system, they have all the machinery and then all investments.
Aren't they developed enough so as to train all those farmers that you say do not want to go from one end of the spectrum to the other, that they could be trained in that and then move towards that?
Unfortunately, they have the resources and they are using those resources to promote the system that is known now is more damaging for the climate. So, they are putting their subsidies even for the same system that is known for the more emissions. Instead of using the subsidies for the farmers, inviting them to invest into the cleaner systems, and using this subsidy they are offering to the farmers, and changing the system, at least in the long run, if not in the short run. So, they unfortunately are not taking adequate steps
All right.
to do
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, I'll quote our Prime Minister Imran Khan when he of course addressed the MGI, and he said, and I quote, "Humanity faces probably one of the biggest crises. Unfortunately, this crisis was quite visible 20 years back, but somehow everyone was in self-denial. No one believed this would affect us after you, once you alter the nature." We are altering the nature, especially in the developed nations. They have been altering nature in one form or the other. Even in these countries such as ours, in the past there have been certain changes that have not borne well with the climate change or with the green initiatives. Don't you feel it is high time that we realize what we are going to face in the next years if we do not take the adequate measures?
So unfortunate that even if we realize no country alone can go for a larger sort of initiative enough that can help us reduce the emission for this region. So, it has to be the global initiative, global steps large enough that can help us reduce the emissions. In other countries, it is more like how your quality of life, the system of the housing, energy, and all these things. They are more concerned about that. Well, in the south, we are more concerned about our food production systems. This is changing fast, and farmers do not have the knowledge and the resources. Even if they have the knowledge, they do not have the resources to invest to reduce the risks of changing climate. We see like the shifting rains, in the areas where we are producing say rice. So, we are seeing that the rains are shifting to the south where we were producing cotton.
But that is also one of the effects of climate change.
It is, and it's just not very easy for the farmers to shift from say one crop to the other.
True, agreed.
And it's not even easy for us as an economy, because our economy is as closely linked to a few major crops. And as Prime Minister says that we are importing like pulses. We used to produce pulses and oil seed crops in the areas from Sialkot towards Lahore.
All right.
But now, if you go over there, you hardly find any acre.
There needs to be a change as far as the crop production and the areas where the crops are produced, so that we could become more efficient as far as combating the effects of climate change is concerned. One last question. Let's go to what the Middle East and the Saudi Crown Prince has initiated. He is going to invest 39 billion riyals, which is equivalent to $10.4 billion US, to reduce carbon emissions in the region and protect the environment. And he is also going to contribute 15% of funds to work with other states and developing funds on the funding and execution of these initiatives. How short term or long term are the results going to be of this investment in the Middle East?
What I'm happy about this initiative is on paper it looks well planned.
It does.
Well planned. It's a Green Initiative Foundation working on different initiatives, thinking, planning strategies. Then they have early warning systems, reducing the risks, so that any one private even investments, they will it will invite more investment because it will be people will be considering safer to invest in those areas. Third is this, they are making it regional. Middle East is planned. It's not just
relegated to Saudi
one
Arabia.
country.
Yes,
and then the countries have the resources, and they are used to high temperatures. It's not something new for them, but when they see that they can do it, it's doable, and then they have the resources to do that. I'm feeling it is going to change the region.
Okay, and do you feel we are going to see those changes in the next 10 years, or maybe it will be less than that?
It will be longer than this, but we will start seeing the sort of changes, and it's its short term impacts, but the larger impact we will only be able to see of maybe after two decades or so.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Shahid Sahab, climate expert, who have talked about the MGI initiative that the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has taken. And of course, there were a lot of leaders that were present there, including our Prime Minister, who talked about his clean and green energy initiatives that his government has initiated in the country and that are reaping the dividends as we speak. And inshallah, in the coming years, Pakistan will come back to its past glory of being that green Pakistan it used to be. And maybe with time, will also change all those resources as far as crop production is concerned. As you said, pulses and others could be produced in Pakistan in the necessary quantity that they need to be. Thank you very much, Dr. Sahab, to have joined us.
You're welcome.
And now let's go to our third story, ladies and gentlemen, that concerns the Federal Shariat Court that has described and declared the custom of Swara as un-Islamic. Now, what is Swara? It is a custom where girls, often minors, are given in marriage or servitude to a family as and of course compensation to end disputes, often murder. It is a form of arranged or forced child marriage, and the result of punishment is decided by a council of tribal elders called Jirga. Now, to talk more about this, we've been joined by Dr. Aslam Khaki, who's a jurist at the Federal Shariat Court. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, to have joined us. Dr. Saab, how important is this decision?
Oh, it's very important decision because as per our custom, a girl is given in marriage of the murderer's family, and in this respect, the 4 rights of the women are jeopardized or injured. Number 1, that the consent of the girl is not sought in this exchange or in this redressal, as it is said. So it is a type of forced marriage. Number 2, there is no dower entitlement for the girl because she is going in exchange as a redressal, as a, you can say, property. So she is treated as a property of the murderer, murdered people. That is the party who there is a murder. And number 4 is that when she though she is brought there as a wife of his son or any other person, she is not treated equally to the other members. She is subjugated, she is humiliated because she is the daughter of the murderer. How can she be given the love? Even in those things, if the other people are living in a bungalow, she is resided in the servant quarter. So in a hate atmosphere, she lives her life. Already in our section 308 of the PPC, Associate Law, it has been provided that no girl would be given in marriage, that means no money would be there in exchange of the murder that is in the Badr-e-Surah. Already that was a ban. But by the judgment of Federal Shariat Court, it has also been, though it is a custom. So this custom having the force of law, when it carries or jeopardizes the rights of any person, this custom has also been declared illegal, un-Islamic, and so wide. So I think it's a great judgment.
All right. Now, Dr. Saab, this custom of Swara that you have said is now declared, has been declared illegal. When is this declaration by the Federal Shariat Court be implemented in all the different courts across the country?
Thank you very much. It is already implemented for the Jirga system. Touching the criminal law has already been declared illegal by the Supreme Court. Or any violation of the right of any person, whether it is in the name of Jirga or in the name of Vani or in the name of Swara, that also stands illegal. The judgment of Shariat Court has added to it by stamping it. Otherwise, it was already illegal. Any person can go there. So even the girl or any person can go into the writ petition under this law or even this general provision of the Constitution under the fundamental rights provided by the state to the people. So one is also the violation of the fundamental rights of the citizen. Even, sorry to say that even if the Federal Shariat Court has not given this judgment, the law was there that it is a violation of the human rights.
Now this has also been declared by the Federal Shariat Court, which is a very important step as far as declaring such incidents such as Vani or Swara as illegal and against the injunctions of Islam. Thank you very much, Dr. Aslam Khaki Saab, to have joined us and to have cleared the air around Vani and of course Swara as being against the injunctions of Islam, and of course this declaration that has been put forward by the Federal Shariat Court. Thank you, sir, very much. Let's go to our last story, ladies and gentlemen, and that is on rather a positive front. The first female-dominated police station has opened in Azad, Jammu and Kashmir's Rawalakot region. This station was provided with an 11-member team that was led by Sub-Inspector Zahida Hanif as the station house officer. Now these women who are now part of the female-dominated police station in Rawalakot are going to investigate complaints about harassment of women at the workplace, educational institutions, cyber stalking, child abuse, domestic issues, mainly violence, civil issues including property disputes and cases in which females have been the accused. So of course it goes a long way as far as alleviating the issues concerning women are concerned, and women can feel safer going to a police station that has a majority of women as the officers present at that station, because they can openly talk about the different issues that pertain to them, and the women also understand where they come from, so they can also take appropriate action at the right time so that these issues are done away with. The strength of police women in Azad Jammu and Kashmir is hardly 150 out of 8,000, but the region has seen this appointment of the first female SHO also in a male police station in October 2016. So of course changes are coming as far as the appointments of women on different forefronts are concerned, and especially in the police section. We've seen the SHO in 2016, as I just said, although we didn't know about that, now we do, and now we have a first female-dominated police station that has opened up in Azad Jammu and Kashmir's Rawalakot region. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with news stories and segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe, get yourselves vaccinated, follow the standard operating procedures for the pandemic as well as for dengue. Allah Hafiz.